Welcome to New Hampshire Politics with John Burt. I'm John Burt. I want to thank you for joining me today. And today we have a special guest, and I'm excited to have him on. And it's Jim Adams, and he's running for Executive Council in District 4. And we'll talk a little bit more of what covers District 4. But Jim, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, John.
Yeah,
appreciate it very much.
Well, I'm excited to have you here because I've always been a fan of yours. You're a good conservative, a smart man. I'm very.
Thank you very much for the kind words, John. It's a privilege to be here.
Yeah. But District 4 is, kind of a smaller area. Unlike, what we'll do is we can throw up a map and it shows all the districts. District 1
is huge.
Now that was the Ray was
that was Ray Burton.
Ray Burton.
Yeah, Joe Kenny's there now.
I can't imagine campaigning on that. But then District 4 is the purple, and that's the district you are in. And if you want, I'll read through the towns real quick. And how would they get a hold of you if somebody can't watch the show for the whole show and they want to get a hold of you?
JimAdams.org. It's my website, and it's got a number to get a hold of me. And there's a lot about me, and I would suggest JimAdams.org.
Well, that's real easy.
That's easy. We try and make it very simple. They try to make it simple for me.
Yes. And well, what it is, District 4 covers in Hillsborough County. It covers quite a few counties. Hillsborough County, it covers the towns of Bedford, Goffstown, Manchester, and that's it here. And then Merrimack County is Allenstown, Bow, Chichester, Epsom, Hooksett, Loudon, Pembroke, and Pittsfield. And then you even cover over into Rockingham County, and that's Auburn, Candia, Deerfield, Londonderry, Northwood, and Nottingham, and then even 2 towns in Strafford County, which is Barrington and Lee. Now that's over by the seacoast, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you live in any of those towns, make sure you check Jim out. But I guess I'd like to start right off. I wrote a few questions to keep us on track, and I guess the first question is, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm born in New Hampshire, lived here all my life.
Really?
And the only time I was away was 4 years in the Navy, 69 to 72, and 9 years in Washington. And that's where I learned how our government works, or I should say doesn't work.
Yes.
Found a lot of problems down there. And, I started at 17 years old. I joined the Navy, and I served. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And after I got out of the Navy, I became a letter carrier in the Manchester Post Office because I had been extended. They wouldn't let me leave when my enlistment was up because I was a critical rating. I had to stay. So I missed the August or the first semester of college. So I carried mail until January when I was going to go to school.
Yeah.
And I was on the top of the list, and people said, why don't you do this, take this job, and go to school nights, which I did. So for 10 years, I carried mail, and I went to school nights, got my degree in business, and then I became a supervisor and became the first person in the history of the Postal Service to start as a letter carrier in Manchester, New Hampshire, and become the chief of staff for 3 postmaster generals.
Wow.
It was a wonderful, wonderful journey. It was just full of wonderful things that I was able to do that I never thought I would when I came from my little town in Pittsfield. That's where I was born, grew up, and it was just amazing. I was the liaison for the White House, for the Department of Defense, for the Veterans Administration, and I would handle all the hot potatoes up on the Hill. When Strom Thurmond said, you're not shutting that post office, I had to go up and get choked.
Yes.
And at 92 years old, he was still full of, you're going to do it my way. So it was quite a learning experience. Yeah. And then after 9 years down there, I came back home to New Hampshire to round out my career. I was a district manager in New Hampshire, and then New Hampshire and Vermont, and then ended up with New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. I had about probably just under 12,000 employees.
Wow.
I had a $2 billion a year budget, and we serviced just about 2.2 million people. So I have a good idea of what it would take in a public service position because I was in public service all my life. And we learned to do the right thing for our customers and employees. And when the employees realized that our customers were our most important resource,
Yeah.
and with our employees could make things happen, that's how we were successful. And a lot of people say, well, the Postal Service has gone off a cliff. I wouldn't brag about that. Well, when I was there, we paid down, in that 9-year period, paid down a $13 billion debt. We saved through cost avoidance a $14 billion savings for our ratepayers, the people, the men and women who use the service, and that's a $27 billion savings. And people say, well, what has happened? And I inform them that Social Security and the U.S. Postal Service have the same problem. Since 1972, the federal government, through their, what they call their errors in computing what the Postal Service should do to pre-fund its retirees.
Yes.
It's $170 billion since 1972 to 2010 when they finally admitted the error. And the new FERS system, which takes care of the folks who weren't civil service, that's $16 billion to the bad. So that's what's, and that money, once they get that money, it's gone.
Yes.
But they're doing the same thing to the Social Security. The only thing they're doing is putting these IOUs in there. And so I tell people, you equate those two, that's the same thing. They're taking stuff away, but when I was there, it was very efficient. And one can only imagine how efficient it really is if it hadn't been raided all of those years.
Well, that's what I understand, Jim, is really that, you know, Congress and the Senate have been stealing out of the piggy bank.
Exactly.
And if they didn't, you guys would, you know,
Right.
the post office would be a lot better today.
Their hands are
financially.
always in there. And I look at, you know, the way our federal government is working, and unfortunately, I'm sad to say, it's come right to the state of New Hampshire. It's a very similar thing, and that was why, you know, my wife and I have 6 children, 10 grandchildren, and we're both retired, and she's too young to retire, but she stopped working when I did. She said, you need to have somebody go places with you. So we've done that, but we're spending most of our time with our grandchildren, which is one of the most rewarding things you could ever do.
It is.
But the reason I have decided to run for executive council is that when I was a youngster, my mom and dad gave me a wonderful moral compass. I've lived by that, and at that time, I remember my dad saying, there's nothing you cannot accomplish if you're willing to work hard for it.
Yes.
I'm worried about my grandchildren because that might not be the case anymore. We are going to give them a world that's far less successful than what we had, or the opportunity for success. And so that's why I want to come back in here, because I try to keep things as simple as I can explain, because my grandchildren are from 23 to 3, so we've got a big.
Yes.
And I try and chat, and I like to equate this country right now, the road we're on. We've come to a bend, not a bend in a road, we've come to a fork in the road. And on the left, we have the progressive liberal agenda, everything for everybody.
Yep.
Or I like to say on the right, we've got the American trail that the conservatives are trying to hold on to, that same thing that my dad said, that if you work hard, there's nothing you can't have. And I'm tired of us. The state of New Hampshire has gone an awful long way down that trail that's not, nobody's being held accountable.
Yeah, down the Bernie Sanders trail. Really.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything for everybody with absolutely no concept how to pay for it. I like to stay on the American trail, and I believe that in small government, I believe in low taxes, and I believe that low spending is that helps with low tax, because if you get low spending, it's going to be, taxes are going to be lower. And as we progress down there, I also know that we have people in our society, the vulnerable, have to be taken care of.
Yes.
That is our responsibility
Yes.
as our fellow man. We have to do that. But as being the chairman for Granite State taxpayers for the last 4 years, I also realize that we cannot allow government to grow faster than the people's ability to pay for it.
And it
We've
is.
got to slow down. We've got to look at this, and I'm very happy that the last 2 years that the Republican-controlled House and Senate put forth a budget that even though it was vetoed for nothing but political reasons,
Yes.
and there were no changes when she finally decided, okay, I'm going to sign this.
No, virtually none.
Exactly. And that budget now is, with a little bit of, the revenues are better than expected.
Yeah.
And of course, they already want to go spend that.
Oh, yes.
And we need to put that away for a rainy day. And that's I think this fork in the road is where I want to head down the American Trail that I was on when I was a young man, and I want to maintain that. And I want that for my children, my grandchildren, and for everybody's grandchildren and children in the state of New Hampshire, because I firmly believe that we have so many opportunities that we can, if we just step back a little bit, don't overspend our budget. Like the people who are paying the taxes, they sit at their table every day at the evening and they say, okay, we can't have this vacation, but we'll do this one, because they know they cannot spend more than they have.
Yeah.
That needs to get back into the day-to-day business of our governing of the state.
Now, with your background, what I like to hear, Jim, is what you're saying. When you go to, if you're elected as the executive council in District 4, you're going to hear from the taxpayers.
Right.
Keep spending down.
Right.
But then the people that want the money, they're going to be screaming at you, we want the money. Well, with you down to Washington being strangled almost every day for 9 years or 10, you're ready for that job.
Exactly, because all you have to do is just be upfront with the folks, tell them what they need to hear,
Yes.
not what they want to hear.
And did you do that when you were in the post office?
Yeah, I did that all, and a lot of folks were there. Well, that's not what we want to do this, this, and this. Well, we cannot do that.
And there was probably compromise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
to a point.
To a point, you have to
Yeah.
compromise,
Yeah.
and we have to. I believe that a lot of folks say, well, we just stop all spending. We're going to do this. That you can't do that.
No,
because
you can't.
That's not realistic.
Yeah.
We've got to be realistic in our approach to how we spend, and I always have told the taxpayers, for every dollar of taxpayers' money we spend, they should get $1 value. And not just have, well, we can't find where some of this went and some of this is gone. So I'm very, very cognizant of that, and I know that many of the people that I speak to along the campaign trail, they work very, very hard. And they want to continue to be able to do things with their children on a weekend and take them here and take them there.
Yeah.
But as taxes go up and more complicated regulations are put in place for the young men and women that want to start their own business, it's almost too hard to start.
Yes.
Because they're putting roadblock after roadblock. Let's just tip that upside down, put the pyramid the way it should be, and let's help these people down here start their business, whether it's through tax breaks or whatever it may be. Get these businesses going, keep the young people from leaving this state. The
Yes.
bright and best are all going somewhere else for a better job. Let's get that industry in here. And it's not as simple. Everybody says, well, you've got so many things to overcome. You've got to, it's the highest energy prices in the country or in New Hampshire. And you've got these other very, very stringent regulations and tax after tax after tax on the businesses.
Yes.
And we need to look at all of that. And those are the things that need to be put on the table. And as you mentioned early, that's where we've got to have consensus.
Yes.
Once people start once our young people start staying here, we will be a lot better off for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like our next president is going to pick at least 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices,
Exactly.
if not 3, but minimum is going to be 2. Now, as an executive counselor, that is extremely important too, because with your background, you're going to be picking judges. You're going to confirm judges.
Exactly.
Is that? Yeah, that's how it does.
Exactly.
So the governor, hopefully, is going to be Republican, brings in the candidate, and it's up to the executive council that could say yes or no on this.
Exactly.
And also commissioners.
All of the commissioners, directors, all of these folks come through the process, the executive council. And I've told many, many people that I believe so much in the Constitution of the United States that I was 17 years old, I was willing to give my life for it.
Yes.
And the Constitution of New Hampshire is just as precious a document. And I believe that those, and I like to use the term, that the Constitution of New Hampshire is a block of granite. It's etched in granite. It is not a flexible document that they can, well, I think they meant this, and I think they mean, if a judge, when I interview a potential judge nominee, and he or she says, well, it's open to interpretation, they will not get my vote. Because the one thing that really, and it's at a national level, but it comes right down to the state level.
It does.
When you hear the President of the United States calling blatant terrorist attacks gun violence, there's something wrong. Why do they want to disarm the American citizens? Well, as I said, when I was 17 years old, I was willing to die for it, and I know a lot of other folks who are just as adamant about the Second Amendment. We have to have the right to protect ourselves and our families, and that should never be taken away. And any judge that says, well, that's up for interpretation or nominee, then that individual will not get my vote.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, and that was my third question is really, where do you stand on the Second Amendment?
Well, I'm adamant about that because it's so, to some people, because there are a lot of people that say, well, after what happened at Sandy Hook and those were terrible, horrific tragedies.
Absolutely, yeah.
And more regulations would have done nothing to any of those. There was a horrible, horrible items. But I tell people, let's just close your eyes, and I'm pushing a carriage with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old in it. And my wife has got holding the hand of the 9-year-old as we're going somewhere, and some madman comes after us with a machete.
Yeah.
Now, what am I supposed to do? Try and get as many as I can and run away from this fellow, or do I take care of my family? My answer is I take care of my family.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, that's my responsibility.
Yes.
My most important responsibility, because those little ones are in my care. They are my legacy, and they are going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And I'm not a violent man. In fact, when I was in the service, I was a corpsman. I dealt with the human wreckage of war. I've seen the horrific wounds of war. And the last thing I'd want to do is harm anyone. But if someone was about to harm me or mine, I would do what had to be done.
Yes, and absolutely. And I think we need judges to understand that and accept that.
And many of the Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment people that I chat with feel exactly the same way I do. They are not gun zealots that want to just do this, that, and the other thing. They have a right. They want that right protected.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Now, one problem that the Executive Council and the current governor has been working on, along with the senators and the representatives like myself, is the opioid crisis that we have in New Hampshire. The time you get elected, it's still going to be there.
Right. It's huge, and especially when you look back at how many people died last year. Before it was a crisis, the number has grown this year, but it was still 400 people died last year.
Yeah.
From this scourge that has just taken over the country, and now I would say it's a #1 issue in the state of New Hampshire right now. And the reason it is because people weren't working together. We had people going in different directions. I feel that local law enforcement was not getting the support they needed. And it proved out when the drug czar that was asked to leave, he said, well, I've been working for months on this, and I have meetings with the police and this and that and the other, and they couldn't find one police chief or one sheriff that had met with this fellow. He didn't even know these people. He was getting all of this, the treatment and the keep it from being a repetitive issue. He was working on those issues, but we've got to have everybody on the same page. The police and the EMS, the folks who are we'll call them the front line. They get the call when there's someone down or there's somebody selling drugs. We need to make sure we give them all the support we possibly can. And then we need drug courts. So let's say that it's the first time one of these people, or maybe the second time, and all they are doing, they're a user. They're not a pusher. They're not selling it to little children or other stuff.
Yes.
We need to get them to realize what they have done is wrong, and then get them the help so they can put this in the rearview mirror, get put back into the mainstream of society, and this will not become such a problem. But it has to be a bottom to top operation where everybody is involved. You get the law enforcement, because we're not going to arrest our way out of this thing.
No,
it can't happen.
That's right.
We've got to give them the care necessary to become, once again, productive citizens of our state.
Yeah, and the governor is going to be bringing issues in front of the executive council where you're going to have to decide on those.
Right, and we're going to have to make sure that we have enough places to give these people the help they need. And it's a very complex issue, but it can be brought down to its simplest terms where everybody's working together.
Yes.
Because when the rope is going this way, nothing's going to get accomplished.
It doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, when one group wants to, arrest our way out of it and the other group says, no, let's do this, we're not going to get anywhere.
It's got to be. And the real issue is the way I look at it, is that Manchester, of course, being the biggest city in the state, is the one that was having a tremendous amount of deaths.
Yes.
And the EMS and ambulance folks were running all the time. And it took I guess the defining moment was when the mayor of Manchester said, we must declare a state of emergency. And then people got aware of it. My question is why weren't the people at the top aware of what was going on? They have to know if they're out there doing constituent services,
Yep.
if they're talking to their people every day. If somebody's talking to the chief of the Goffstown police, the chief of the Manchester police, the chief of the Bedford police, and going into all of these other areas in the district, talking to those folks, they're going to say, hey, we've got a real problem. It could have very easily come up at the governor and council meeting. What are we doing about this? Why does Chief so-and-so say he's had 5 deaths in his, and then you start going around the table of 5 and everybody's going to say the same thing. Well, how are we going to fix this?
Yeah.
Not that the council is going to do that, but it could be an additional help to get it done and to make sure that, because the legislature and the Senate, of course, they pass the laws and take care of the funding issues. But the last vote is with the executive council.
Absolutely.
And you've got to have a conservative approach, in my opinion, but you've also got to remember that we're in the business of dealing with people, helping people, or in some cases, correcting people who need to be corrected.
Yes.
And that's where we've got to be an element that helps and is not a deterrent.
Yes. And now when the governor comes forward with spending, is it 5,000 or 10,000 that they need your permission?
Anything over 5,000 has to go through the council.
So that's a small amount.
It is, and and someone said that is, when I've explained this to people, that the New Hampshire governor is in terms of the other governors, is the weakest governor in the United States because they have to go through the committee of 5.
Yes.
And if they can't get 3, then they can't get what they want. But at the same time, there has never been, in my opinion, to my knowledge, a governor of New Hampshire who has ever been arrested for some sort of embezzlement or some sort of crimes, because it is everything is wide open. Yeah. Just like it's on this camera, that's the way the business of the state is handled, and that's a good thing. Now, to say there's no corruption, I would certainly hope there isn't, but there's far less chance the way it is run this way.
Yes.
And it's an opportunity for everybody to be vetted properly, and I feel that the council is a very, very important part of that piece. People say we need a lieutenant governor and get rid of the council. Well, I think not. I think that if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely. No, I like it the way it is because our founding fathers set it up this way to make sure that the 5 of you that are elected, keeps an eye on that governor.
Right, and it has to be that way because we have to have commissioners. As the commissioners go forward, we have to make certain that they realize that the taxpayers are paying for all of the services we're giving. Yeah. And we need to get the best possible return on investment for every dollar. And it doesn't mean, well, it would be nice if we could have all these nice perks and these nice things. Well, the people paying for them don't have those. So it wouldn't be a good idea to give somebody something that the people paying the bill they can't afford. So it all has to be looked at very carefully. It's not a simple situation, but it's just good hard work reading the contracts. One of the elements I remember back in 2010, Ray Wazorek, who happens to be my co-chair on my campaign committee.
Oh, Ray's a great guy.
He's with me, and he's my fiscal agent, one of my top supporters. And they were redoing the contract for health benefits for state employees and retirees. Blue Cross Blue Shield had it, and evidently they did an all right job, and the administrative services was not going to put that $250 million contract out for competitive bid. Cigna was still here and could have bid on that. And Ray was trying very hard to get the other members of the council to say, oh, no, a $250 million contract has got to go out for bid. You just cannot say, well, they're doing a good job, we're going to give it to them.
Yeah.
Because in when I worked as chief of staff, we had $500 million, $200 million contracts come through quite often when we were building up our automation. And I learned through the working with the engineer and the chief financial officer that in a $200 million contract, there can be 2 to 4% fudge factor. Well, they get a little bit more here because they, just in case this one doesn't work. And when you start talking 8, 10, $12 million worth of fluff, you want that out because that's taxpayers' money. And Ray could not get the others to go with him, and he was very upset. And I believe I would work very hard with my fellow councilors that contracts of that magnitude have to be run through the public. And I call it the public car wash because when you put it out for competitive bid, everybody has a chance.
Yes, yeah. And HHS is really our biggest spender.
Right, they are.
You know, and they got to have some big contracts in there. You know, the Department of Transportation must have some.
They've got huge contracts. And so those all need to be reviewed and to make sure that everything is, once again, that there is nothing unethical and there's nothing illegal. And most importantly, that the taxpayers are getting the best return on their investment.
Yes, and that's what we have to do. And now one subject that, you know, some people don't like to talk about, but I'd like to bring it up is, you know, where do you stand on, you know, pro-life or pro-choice issues?
Well, I'm a pro-life individual. My wife and I, as I mentioned, we have 6 children, 10 grandchildren.
Yes.
And going back to my time in the Navy, when I was a corpsman, as I told you, I dealt in the human wreckage of war. And when you see how someone who was critically injured hangs on to their life with every fiber in their being, and finally that they can't fight the fight any longer and that life is gone. I learned at 18 years old how precious life was, and I believe that never should one be taken as a matter of convenience. And certainly never paid for by taxpayers' money.
Yes.
That's why this recent Northern New England Planned Parenthood vote is, first of all, I'm wondering about the ethic and legal ramifications of this, because I've talked to people who have been in the governor's, have been the executive council for going back to the late 60s. And they have never heard of an item that was defeated in the 2-year cycle being brought back in the same cycle.
Yes.
And when you read further, the fact that these people, someone told Planned Parenthood, continue doing, even though it did not make it through the executive council, you continue doing what you're doing, and we'll bring it forward again, and if we pass it, it'll be retroactive. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yes, I've never heard of that either.
And they said, well, Governor Hassan said, well, you've got to understand that the legislature saw fit to put that money in the budget. And I'm thinking, they did?
I don't think
exactly.
We did. Yeah, I think.
And the bottom line is that it had been voted down, and it should never have come back. Now,
and it was like $785,000, right?
I think it ended up to be about $500,000 to $600,000.
Okay.
It's a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And when you look at Planned Parenthood, when they file their filings for their 501c statuses, you look at the money, it's $20 million. They are worth $20 million. Wow. They spend $1 million on lobbyists.
Really?
They spend another $200,000 on campaign contributions. There's something wrong with that.
Wow. Well, let me explain to the viewer, if you don't mind, what happened is 2 years ago, the executive council, 3 of them Republican, 2 Democrats, they voted not to fund Planned Parenthood.
Right.
And then just was it
in June? It was in June, exactly.
Yeah, June. They brought it back, the 2 Democrats, and sadly, Chris Sununu saw fit to pass it, and Governor Hassan was happy with that.
Exactly.
But then they made it retroactive to pay the whole 2 years. And I just wanted to clear that up with because it is kind of confusing because it doesn't happen.
It's never happened before. And it's just such a hot button issue for so many people.
Oh, it is.
And it's just not appropriate when something has already been defeated to bring it back. But as I've researched, the governor sets the agenda. So the governor felt it was in her best interest to bring it back. Well, was it in the best interest of the taxpayers?
Yeah.
That is still to be determined.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, my friend David Wheeler, he must have stroked about it.
Well, David was asked a series of questions. David and Joe Kenny asked a series of questions that were outstanding. David asked point blank to the Commissioner of Health and Human Services, we just expanded Medicaid to the tune of almost $500 million.
Wow.
What does that, and we put the 50,000 people on, what do they not get for services from Medicaid that they can get from Planned Parenthood? Because because the governor kept saying, as well as the Colin, the fellow running for governor, can't even remember his last name, he and Pappas all said, well, it's women's health issues. And David asked the third time, well, what women's health issues are not covered by Medicaid?
Yes.
They would not say it. There's only one thing that's not covered, and that's abortion. And so that was, and then Joe said, I believe that taxpayers' money should not be utilized for that. And it went back and forth, and Maggie Hassan kept saying, no, you don't understand, it's women's health. Well, I don't think so.
But they already have health.
Through the Medicaid, they have the expansion, they have it. So that dog didn't hunt, and they just were doing the old Washington two-step. They hope they get everybody dizzy enough, so they're just going to stop asking questions. Yeah. And I give Dave credit. Dave and Joe hung in there, and they both voted their conscience, and they voted from here against it. And, well, the rest is history. But the bottom line is that it was just a very, very, it was a political game. It was very, very, as I say, I think, in my opinion, for what it's worth, it was unethical.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I'd love to know where the campaign funds go to. Yeah,
that would be nice to, because I've
Somebody
always
should check into
well,
that.
Exactly. Well, I've always heard the other side is always saying the Republicans are always doing this for big oil, for millionaires, blah 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 blah, and it's when you look at it, something as blatant as this really, in the someone said it's kind of smells like dead fish here.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no, I know a lot of people are upset over that, just because it's never been done before. Right. Yeah. Now, you've talked a lot about your background and how you are, qualified for the position, and I think that'd be very good as you, work your way in there.
Well, I think the question, John, is that, and the answer is the fact that I have done this I did this for 27 years as one of the top executives. The similarity between the Postal Service and they're called a Board of Governors, and New Hampshire's Executive Council, it's so amazing. They're almost identical because the governors of the Postal Service are appointed by the President, confirmed by the United States Senate, and there's 9 of them, and they run the operation. The Postmaster General does the day-to-day, but he cannot do, or she cannot do anything without the clearance of the governors. And it's the same thing with the governor of New Hampshire and the 5 councilors. They have to have, as I think it was Ray Wazorek always used to say, if you can't count to 3, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
and that's the way it is. And so the similarities between those, the research and the work going over the potential contracts that are coming through, and I think really digging into the weeds and to make certain that what they're asking for is what they really need. And if Health and Human Services is asking for X amount of dollars for a contract for child and women's services, and they say we need, let's say, we'll just fictitiously put out a $20 million, and that was going to be 20 or 30 extra people to work on that. And then over here, Health and Human Services has got 20 people that do the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, do we need to have 40 people doing this, or do we need to just have either do these folks here in Health and Human Services need to go and have it all contracted? So those are the questions I want answered, and I want to know exactly what is the best use of our limited resources to take care of the people in need, but without having, well, those are extras in case we need them. That's a $20 million contract. That's not an extra. That's a lot of money.
That is.
And those are the things that I'll be checking every day. And that's what I had to do when I was the chief of staff. Do we need this? Is this a fun thing to do, or is this something we absolutely must do? And that's all we did with the things that we absolutely must do.
Now, with 12,000 employees under your belt at one time, I mean, that's a lot of...
It was, and when I was chief of staff, there was 850,000 employees.
Wow.
$71 billion a year budget. Wow. And everybody was a stakeholder because we touched so many people. And of course, Congress, as I mentioned, they were always picking our pocket for something. And we were able to still get things done day to day because we had great employees who worked hard and wanted to make sure that the job was done every day.
Yes.
And the fact that, as I mentioned, because of the same raid on the Postal Service that the Congress has done on the Social Security, there's just that's what's causing such a problem right now.
It is.
And it's amazing that all of those problems all stem from one, or I should say two places, the House and the Senate. So,
now, for staff at the Executive Council, is there two ladies in there?
yeah, there's two folks that...
So you're going to have to you must like to read a lot.
Oh, I'm going to do that, and Ray Wazorek back in when he first got in there, and with the help of the other governors, the other counselors at the time, he said what we need is no more than a 2-page executive summary on this pile of paper, because this pile was 99% boilerplate. Of all, it has to be in there.
Light bill and
exactly.
et cetera. Yes.
Now, what is the real, what is this contract going to do that we are not already doing? And that's where you look at it, and then maybe it makes good sense to try and, I think that they did, I've talked to Chris Clements, a former commissioner of transportation. Yeah. And at one point they said, well, let's see if it would be more cost effective to have all of the orange trucks go away and contract that all out. They did a very extensive study, and they found out, much to some people's, they were surprised, it's much more efficient to have the orange trucks with the men and women who work there than it is to try and hire a contractor to do that. But that's for probably 2/3 of the year. But that 1/3 of the year of the winter, you have to have contractors to augment, because there's no way there'd be enough of them. So that was a good study. Another thing that he did is our roads and bridges are huge problems in the state of New Hampshire.
Yes.
They are everywhere, because everybody kept saying, well, put it off for another year and it'll be fine. Well, he'd come up with a plan, which is exactly what we're looking for in this state, is to get out of the box and think out of the box. It's the best way to give the taxpayer the best bang for their buck. And he looked at repaving is going on all the time. And in about 2 or 3 years, they have to go back and do it again. So he put a group of folks together, and they said, we'll go into, and they did it on Route 28 from Allenstown to, I think they did it all the way up to Epsom.
Oh, yeah.
They went in and they ground up like the first 1.5 or 2 inches of old stuff on there, and they put down all brand new hot top. And now I think it's in year 5 now, and it's like they just did it last year.
Really?
And then from Epsom to the Alton traffic circle, they just went through in the real bad strips and did it. Ah. And this year I think they're going to come back and do the other strips. But the bottom line was that Chris found out, or decided that the people that he put together found out that if they took down that 1.5 or 2 inches, resurfaced over that, then it would last maybe 10 years. And once again, that huge savings goes right back into the pockets of the taxpayers.
Yes.
And that's what we're all trying to do. And that's who I'm worried about, is the taxpayer, but is also making sure that when people drive from Barnstead to Alton, they don't have to have a kidney belt on driving the car. And we have some of those in New Hampshire.
Oh, yes.
So we've got to have that, but it's a balance. Yeah. It's got to be common sense.
Yes.
And unfortunately, sometimes there's not a lot of common sense. But these simple approaches, I think, are the best way to do it.
Now, one advantage you're going to have from virtually day one is your friend Ray Resort.
Oh,
I
yes.
am sure he is going to help you, once you get into office, by saying, okay, look here. I mean, that is just, the value of that is incredible.
His knowledge and he is part of the backbone of this state for so many years. When you look at what he accomplished as mayor,
Yes.
and look what he accomplished as a executive counselor.
Yeah.
You're right. That will be a resource, that someone that I can bounce things off and say, Ray, well, they say they're going to do this and this, and he'll say, yeah, they said that 5 years ago, but it didn't work. And
Yes.
so it's always good to have that individual with the institutional knowledge that is going to be lacking, because right now, David Wheeler and Joe would be the senior guys with Chris and the other fellow leaving, because
Yes.
so they're the senior players. So
Wow. Yeah, so that is going to be very
and
valuable.
that would be a very, very. Ray has always been someone that I've always been able to chat with, and we talk over in fact, that's why when I kind of went through a lot of what I've been talking about with you, that's why Ray said, well, you should run. And he said, I'm going to back you, because you know what needs to be done.
Yes.
There's not going to be that long learning curve, and you can understand that we do not have somewhere in the State House, it's not in the governor's office, and it's not in the where the executive council is. There's not a little printer that just prints out dollar bills.
No,
We don't have one of those.
Yeah.
It has to come from the hardworking men and women in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that they are represented by someone who understands that and will realize that let's let them keep some of their money.
Yes.
They work very hard
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, well, and the other advantage that you really have too is that you've been under the heat down in D.C.
Right.
With the post office, all those years. I imagine they breathed down your neck many times. And you got to keep your cool and, like you
Right.
said, compromise and move forward and state your, this is why we need to do this.
Right. And down there, the objective always was the customer. Let's
Yes.
remember that at the end of the day, we're in the business to take care of the customer. And in the state of New Hampshire, we got to realize we have stakeholders everywhere.
Yeah.
And I will work very, very hard for the 250,000 people in District 4.
Yes.
I will not be persuaded in any manner or means by special interests. I will look what's best for everyone, all 250,000 people, not just a handful of special interests.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, what do you think about commuter rail? Because they keep talking about bringing that up.
That thing is like a James Brown song. It keeps coming back. It will not go away.
It does.
Being the 9 years that I was in Washington, I lived down there and used the metro to go I lived in Fairfax City, Virginia, and it was 17 miles from where I lived to downtown D.C.
Yeah.
And it was probably a 35, 40-minute drive, because they have so many stops. But I think it was $10 a day. It's $5 each way. So it's very economical.
Yeah.
And you're not driving the car and spending all kinds of gas and so on and so forth. But bottom line is that from 6 a.m. until 9 a.m., that thing was full. 7, 8 cars with people packed in there like sardines. And some places it would go it would come out of the ground and go, up between
Yes.
the highways, and then it would go back down. And it would get heavy ridership again from 3:30 till about 6:30. But for the rest of that operational time, there's a half a dozen people on that thing.
Yeah.
It costs a fortune to run those cars with nobody in them, because of the electricity, everything is still very, very expensive. And I look at it from the fact that we have, for folks who don't have the automobiles or have the wherewithal to get to a Boston, or we have a wonderful bus system.
Yes, we do.
And the buses can move, and the best part about that system is if they say, hey, we've pre-sold 20 tickets today to Boston. We only need 2 buses. But if you've got 7 cars on the train, well,
They're still going to move the 7 cars.
And the cost in Washington at that time, of course it was the federal government, so it didn't count. It was
Yeah.
free money.
Yeah.
Because whatever the revenues from the trains did not cover, then the federal government paid the rest. And now if we put in a rail system in New Hampshire, whatever's not covered is going to come from the taxpayers.
Yes.
So the people up in Littleton who don't have a train,
Yeah.
they're going to pay for it, and the people in Goffstown who work across the street are going to be paying for the people going. And I understand the concept because they say that it will cut down on the environmental greenhouse gases. It'll cut down on a lot of pollutants being in the air. But I also believe that the cost has, once again, you've got to weigh the good against the bad. And the cost is going to be astronomical. It could rise to $30 million a year.
Wow.
That the taxpayers in New Hampshire are going to have to pay. And whether they write it or not. And I just feel that at this time,
Yes.
you know, if gas were $10, $13 a gallon, maybe we'd think about it. But right now, I think that it's, the bus system is there to take people to do exactly what the train would do. It's not quite as fancy, not quite as
Well,
nice.
the thing I looked at too is I have ridden on the DC train out to Virginia. You take that whole area, you're talking millions and millions and millions and millions of people.
Right.
And they still run a deficit.
Exactly.
You know, they don't make money.
Exactly.
Here we have, in that general area, do we have 500,000 people or 300,000 that would cover that train area?
Probably 300,000. You're right. It's a small number compared to the number you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
It's just it would not happen. The diminishing returns would eventually cause us to be in big trouble financially, and that's not a funny thing because it's a wonderful, as I mentioned, it's a wonderful idea. Wouldn't it be good if we could do this? But we can't afford it.
Yes.
And in my opinion, we can't. And there are other means available to use this. And the just that area alone that you're mentioning, you know, what I'd like to do is to work with our education system from high school into our colleges, into our community colleges, into our technical institutes. Let's have jobs here in New Hampshire. Let's make New Hampshire a little bit more business friendly.
Absolutely.
To bring those jobs here so we don't need the trains to go away and do these and to have so many people commuting out of the state. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they could stay in the state?
Yeah.
Fix our business climate so we would once again become the business friendly, good place to raise a family we once were.
Yes.
And I think that is what we need to put front and center. And I think that the House and the Senate took a first step this year with the decrease in the tax, and there's more ground to be gained. And as we get these big companies coming into the state of New Hampshire, that's when we're going to, I think it's going to be huge because we've got the colleges here, we've got the bright young people, but they're voting with their feet, they're leaving.
Yeah, we got to get them to stay.
We got to get them to stay, exactly. Yeah. And there's so many, I hear so many fine folks and friends I've got that are, well, you know, we're selling our house and we're going to move to California, we're going to move to Arizona, we're going to move to Texas. And I said, why? Because that's where our children are working. They couldn't get a job up here, and it's...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now we are toward the end, and you know, if you want to talk to the voters, and again, give them your contact information and tell them why you should be, because there is a primary.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, so that's...
It's very important that on September 13th,
yes,
please come to the polls, and I would appreciate your support. You can read more about me at jimadams.org. It's my website. It tells all about me, and it gives you my opinions on things that I think are very, very important. As I mentioned, I believe in small government, low taxes. I was the chairman of Granite State Taxpayers for 4 years. I am presently the chairman of the Veterans Council. In New Hampshire, there's 3 individuals appointed by the governor, confirmed by the executive committee. I want to work for the people of the state of New Hampshire, not special interests. I'll do the right thing, not the politically correct thing, and every action that I take will be based upon the greater good of 250,000 people, not a group of special interests. So on September 13th, I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim, and I really do appreciate you coming on. I did want to, we got just a quick minute left. When you were in the post office at the beginning, they must have read every zip code by hand, is that correct?
Yeah.
So no automated?
No, not at all. It was all hand. And
really? Somebody would sit there?
Yeah, and then it became, the automation came in. That was one of the things I was involved in. It was almost a $9 billion, we spent $9 billion
investment
buying all of these machines that could read 45,000 letters an hour. And it would-
45,000.
And they would sort them, and we had one company that said, okay, I can give you 94%. Well, the boss said, that's 6% of the letters going in the wrong place. He said, I have to have 99%, and we finally got another company that could make the machine for us. And we went forward, and that's, as I mentioned, going through those contracts, you had to make certain that they understood that the bottom line was if Mrs. Jones sends a card to her grandson on his birthday,
Yes.
she wants it to get there that day. And so we spent a lot of time doing that, and now it's so automated. It's
Now, what is the accuracy today? It must be pretty close to...
It's 99%.
Still,
Yeah,
really?
it's amazing.
Wow.
And getting close to 100. And the bottom line is that Congress's meddling has caused the problems that we're having today.
Yeah.
It could easily be fixed too, but it's a situation that I believe that, as a member of the Executive Council, we would be the check.
Yes.
We would be the voice of the people.
Yeah.
In Concord.
Yeah, and you have the experience to start right day one.
Day one, just turn it on.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's good. All right. Well, thank
you
again,
very much, John. Thank you.
I
It's
really
been a pleasure.
appreciate it. And again, we had Jim Adams, Executive Council for District 4. He's a candidate, and make sure you get out
September 13th.
September. I'm jumping way ahead already. Yeah, not winter yet. So September 13th, and make sure you get out to vote because it's very important. And until next time, take care. Bye now.